weeks and weeks and weeks of meetings, lots and lots of paperwork, lots of lawyers, lots of conversations.
Lawyers.
Very expensive lawyers. We love you, Keith. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vagrant Coffee HustleCast. I'm Josh.
And I'm Jared.
And this is our podcast about our entrepreneurial experiences based off of our experiences in coffee.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be talking about
The pivots.
Yeah. Before we get into that, what are we drinking today?
We're drinking Navigator Blend. This is one of our original blends. It's got notes of candy bar, mixed nuts, a little bit of citrus. It's a super balanced coffee.
Awesome. You can pick up a bag at any of our retail locations, or you can buy some online at vagrantcoffee.com. We ship, and you can come pick it up at the store if you buy online. And we're drinking out of these really awesome mirror cups, which are also available online or in our store. They are 12-ounce cups built perfectly for coffee. They keep your coffee super hot. Pick one up whenever you come in.
All right, well, let's get into our topic today. We're talking about pivoting in business.
Yep. Yeah.
So how would you define pivot for somebody who hasn't heard that term?
Yeah, I think a pivot is taking the big picture of your business and executing on that, going out and actually doing the thing that you wanted to do, that you built. But then you hit some sort of obstacle, and it could be, with a person or equipment or whatever, and then you have to change a little bit. You have to turn one way or the other. That's how I define a pivot.
So in our short existence so far, the last couple of years, we have pivoted several times.
Yeah, we have.
We've had some big pivots and some little pivots. I think it's important to understand that not every pivot is a life-changing pivot.
Yeah.
There's some pivots that happen situationally. You're in a store working, something breaks, you got to figure out how to adjust to that.
Yeah. And then sometimes there's those big ones, where something really substantial happens. I mean, it's been for us some really big categorical things,
right?
Things that would, if we didn't play them right, either your business would fail or be able to continue operating. So.
Yep.
It can really be either end of those spectrum. We like to call them macro and micro pivots.
Right.
And the macro pivots are, of course, the big ones. The micro ones are the little ones. But ultimately, the idea is taking the big picture and figuring out, okay, what do I need to tweak and change?
Right. So I think for us, we've kept the same general idea of what our big picture is.
Yeah.
But there's been some significant changes in how we execute on that big picture.
Yeah. So our big picture has always been to provide quality coffee everywhere.
Right.
That's the really big, broad picture.
Yeah. And at the beginning, we kind of had this idea and thought about how that would look.
Yeah.
And some things changed, and we had to completely adjust our business model based on a lot of different factors and circumstances.
Yeah.
And I think you can kind of put the pivot into several categories. Some pivots are environmental. Some pivots are based on customer wants and demands. Some pivots are based on realizing that there's only certain access to funds or people or time. So there's all kinds of reasons for those pivots. Mm-hmm. And I think we have some real world experience in every one of those categories.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think back to some of our big kind of almost business model changing pivots that we've gone through.
Yeah. I think in the early days, we were deciding what kind of coffee we wanted to provide.
Right.
And that was a really big one. There's lots of different coffee companies around and lots of different flavors, lots of different roasting technologies and techniques, but we wanted to figure out our own. And so I would say that was pretty much from April to November of 2017.
Right.
Dozens and dozens of micro pivots.
Yes. Yes, and they were based on our tastes, but also a lot on the tastes of our customers, what the customers were wanting. So there was some coffees that weren't necessarily the coffee that I would want to buy, but that was based solely on we've got people that want to buy coffee from us.
Yeah.
But they want a very specific taste, and so there were some micro pivots there.
Yeah, I remember. I know I'm really partial towards a natural Ethiopian. That's really what I like. I like it lightly roasted, but I don't really like. I don't like dark roasted anything.
Right.
I don't like. I don't, for whatever reason, don't seem to like Kenyan coffees very much. Not a big fan of Sumatran. So that was, for us, like a huge point of conversation. Like we said we wanted.
Spent a lot of time.
Yeah, we said we wanted quality coffee, but then we have to like agree on what exactly is quality coffee.
Yeah, yeah, and that was interesting. That was I would say driven mostly by what our customers were wanting, because a lot of our customers were asking for that darker roasted coffee, and we're asking for things like Kenyans and Sumatrans. We sold the heck out of that first Sumatran.
We did.
Even though that wasn't necessarily our taste. So that's a great example of a customer-driven pivot.
Yeah.
And over time, we spent a lot of time at the beginning, those first couple months, on that question. Okay, what is quality coffee going to mean to our coffee company?
Yeah.
And then over time, we kind of found our groove with that.
Yeah.
It definitely helped when Maria came on board. She's an amazing roaster and really got us dialed in. We had ideas of what we wanted in coffee, and then Maria was able to execute on those ideas better than anybody I can imagine.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
That's a great customer-driven micro pivot.
Yeah.
We had some other ones. So, I mean, when we think about our big picture, we keep coming back to that quality coffee everywhere. So that was the quality coffee piece. We also had the everywhere piece.
Yeah, we did.
And that was a business model changing pivot.
So when we started and we got all of our espresso equipment, we were really excited to be able to take it places and set it up wherever we went. And in the beginning, that went great. We would set up our equipment. It was a little bit cumbersome at times, but we'd set it up and we'd get going. And then we hit that space where we had brought on somebody for help, and then we found the espresso equipment is too heavy.
They can't
for them to pick it up. And that was definitely not something we thought about at that point. Our espresso machine weighs roughly 80 to 100 pounds, kind of depending on water levels, and we had not factored in that not everybody can pick up 100 pounds and carry it across a room. Yeah.
So that was, we had to rethink how we did everywhere.
Yeah.
How we executed on that.
Everywhere became some places.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely not up that flight of stairs.
Yeah.
So that was another tricky, and I don't know, that we kind of put that in the micro category. I feel like it was definitely, we had to figure some pieces out. That was an obstacle that we had to overcome. We had to make some changes, and I think in that sense, in that case, it ended up being a somewhat simple solution. We built a far more robust cart with better rolling capabilities, and we put a ramp on the back of the van.
Yes, we did.
Well, we bought a van, and then we put a ramp on the back of it. And so that's that. I mean, that's just examples like that just happen so often when you're getting a business off the ground, because you can't foresee every possibility, every possible obstacle that could be in your way, because we haven't done this before.
But I think we should also emphasize, like, we understood that was a pivot that we needed to make, but it wasn't that we could do something about it like right then.
Right.
From the moment that we brought on this person to help with these events, we realized, okay, you can't pick up the machine, but we still have these events to do.
Right.
So how do we figure this out?
Right.
And so, it was several months I mean, honestly, it was, I guess, several years before we were able to afford a van.
Right.
Which meant a lot of lifting.
Yep.
And figuring out, okay, how do we actually do this? We can't slow things down if we're going to make the money. We need to be able to continue to do this. And so it was just going to be a lot of lifting and bring in an extra person to kind of team lift. I mean, event after event after event was just stairs and stairs and stairs. And it's tough taking that espresso machine up and down those stairs. Yeah. But that's what we had to do.
Right.
I guess, which in a way, that's a pivot as well of like, well, I wasn't planning on using this much sweat equity in this, but what we got to do, we got to do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, there's just like example after example of things in that vein where, there was environmental or personnel changes that required those pivots. So that one took us a long time. It still wasn't necessarily like business model changing.
No.
But I would say the part of everywhere that was business model changing is our initial thought was that we were only going to be a mobile coffee company. And even though that wasn't necessarily written as part of our big picture, that was kind of, we had never really discussed anything outside of that.
Yeah.
And then again, after doing all of these events, we found, man, we really need a home base.
Yeah.
We have leftover product that isn't being used, and we don't have a place to store it. It feels terrible just throwing this extra milk away. It's hard to like have to go reload up on all these things at the grocery store every event. So I think that was our one of our first really big kind of business model changing pivots, was deciding to add retail stores to what we do.
Yeah. I think it also touched on some of what customers were asking for.
Right.
So when we were getting things going, we had the table and we had the Mini Cooper after a while. And when we would serve customers, they would ask, like, oh, this is cool. Where's your store?
Right.
And we tried our best to explain, like, oh, we're a mobile operation. We don't need a store.
Right.
We're doing fine financially.
Yeah.
We don't need a physical store sucking up all that money. But at the same time, it would be nice to have a hub.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, we started to realize, for at least a large portion of our clients, they were a little bit leery of us, saying like, you say that you're an established company, you certainly come correct, you look the part, but you don't have a store, and that's weird.
Yeah.
And so
it's almost like that sense of legitimacy that they wanted to see a brick and mortar location that would like, okay, you guys are established enough to be able to have a store that was somehow made us legitimate.
Right. So that began some conversations for us.
Right.
To pivot from mobile only to brick and mortar is huge.
Right.
Absolutely huge. It takes substantial financial investment.
Yep.
It takes staffing and organization in ways that we just weren't planning on.
Yeah. I mean, our cash flow situation had to grow by like a factor of 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, what it cost us to operate a mobile only situation was so small compared to what it cost us to operate a retail situation. So that was, we had to rethink how we did everything.
Yeah. So there was, I mean, practically speaking, there were lots of meetings, lots of sitting down, lots of looking at numbers and plans and what other coffee shops were doing. And it wasn't that we didn't know what life is like in a cafe.
Right. Because that was the world we came from.
Right. That wasn't the question. It was, how do we pull this off well and continue to do our special events because we have this? Right. And how do we not rob from ourselves?
Right. Right. So the goal from the beginning was to kind of use the retail as that legitimacy when we're going to sell events, but also kind of as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
Like the more people we can get our logo and brand in front of, the more people can be aware of the things that we offer.
Yeah.
So we have we have posters in all of our stores that talk about our mobile operations and how that works and where they can go find more information on that. We've talked to all of our employees about how they can be talking about that part of our business. And it's always kind of been a marketing tool for the mobile aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. It's for us, mobile gives us a better profit margin. And so we knew, okay, we don't want to hurt ourselves by just saying, okay, I guess we're just doing, retail cafes again. But instead to say, no, we know that this is a good idea. We know that we want to do quality coffee everywhere. Having a brick and mortar doesn't hurt quality coffee everywhere, but how do we make sure that we're not taking away from our big magical thing that we've created?
Right.
But that brought with it some new pivots and some new opportunities. So meanwhile, while we're doing all these special events, we're doing consulting and other things. And then it brought us to this point of seeking investment.
Yes.
And all of what that brought with it. So I know in our history thus far, we've met tons and tons of people who've said all sorts of things. Really, some have said, oh, it's okay to seek investment and to give portions of equity, and that's how you grow. And there's legitimacy there.
Right.
And then some other people have said, like, oh, whatever you do, don't give away equity,
right,
because then that's going to hurt you in the long term. And so that for us was a big conversation of like okay, if we're going to grow with stores, because we need a hub and because it gives legitimacy to the brand, how are we going to do that? Where are we going to get the money to do that? Because right from the get-go, we needed $50,000 cash to even approach a bank about a retail store.
Right.
And we didn't have it.
No, not even close.
Yeah.
So we had to get real creative with that whole process. And I think we learned, like, the whole idea behind a pivot is you have to have a willingness to be flexible.
Yeah.
No matter how solidified your plans are, if you don't have some flexibility built into that, you're not going to be able to move on to the next steps. If we had stuck rigidly to our original plan, exactly how we imagined it at the get-go, we wouldn't be where we're at.
Yeah. True.
I think that flexibility kind of allows you to make these pivots.
Yeah.
So for us, in getting creative and finding financing, it meant bringing on another partner.
Yeah.
And investment that way. And I mean, we went back and forth on this for months, kind of going through all of the different pros and cons and what that meant, what that looked like for how we operated.
Yeah.
And the conclusion that we came to is, if we want to make this pivot that we're looking at, we're going to have to make this other pivot, which includes bringing on another investment partner.
Yeah. So that brought up equity conversations.
Yeah.
Which at one point it makes you feel very legitimate,
right,
that other people are interested in giving you money for equity in your company.
Right.
And at the other point, it's terrifying because you don't want to give up control over this
right,
thing that you built, but you need the investment in order to make it work.
Right.
And so, to make a long story short, we did weeks and weeks and weeks of meetings, lots and lots of paperwork, lots of lawyers, lots of conversations.
Lawyers.
Very expensive lawyers. We love you, Keith. But it was really good for us to go through that process, and then we came out on the other side with a deal that really feels great for us, and it feels great for them.
Yeah.
And we were able to grow.
Yeah.
And it helped us get that legitimacy of our brand and have a hub, ultimately for no cash out of pocket.
Yeah, which is amazing. And we definitely will do a whole podcast surrounding how investment and equity and business partners and all of those things work, because it was, for us, that was such a huge learning experience.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking back to thinking, okay, I've been in coffee for 20 years now. This is going to be easy. These are the things that made me realize that it's not easy. It's not just showing up every day real early in the morning and turning on the espresso machine.
No, not at all. Not at all. It is sleepless nights and waking up to go to an event with frozen equipment and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to pull this off?
Yeah.
And what pivots do we need to make? Yeah, it's been a wild ride of being flexible.
Right.
But because of our flexibility, we've been able to stay afloat, especially now.
Right.
So being in the middle of this coronavirus
Yeah.
has forced us to be even more creative in ways that we couldn't, I mean, nobody could really anticipate.
Right, and I think it was helpful for us to have already gone through all of these pivots leading up to that, because we did know that a little bit of flexibility and creative thinking would kind of help us get out of jams.
Yeah.
And so we were already like ready to do that when this came up. And we saw a lot of companies that really floundered for weeks and weeks when all of this started. And I mean, I think Governor Hogan announced dining rooms had to be closed. Basically, only take out on like a Wednesday, and by Thursday, we had completely reinvented how our stores were operating.
Not to mention, though, special events instantly died.
Right.
Like completely died 0%.
Right.
Because our special events essentially operate off of you have a gathering of people.
Right.
And we're going to do coffee there. And since people can't gather, it's absolutely bottomed out 0%.
Yeah.
And so with these flexibility pieces that we've grown and exercised, we took a look at our stores. We had 3 stores, and we adjusted. We had to shut one down. It was in a space that just couldn't stay. And then the other stores, we decided, okay, let's pivot. We have no idea what that pivot is going to mean or how, because it was like the game kept changing over and over in those early days.
Every couple of days they would change what the rules look like and what we were allowed to do and what we weren't allowed to do.
Yeah.
But I really have been amazed looking back on it, how we've been able to stay on top of and stay I don't know if I would call it profitable, but keep our nose above water.
I would not call it profitable.
We've been able to keep our nose above water this whole time.
Yeah.
And that is definitely due to the practice we've had pivoting both micro and macro.
Yeah. But that's not to say that it's not without its hardship.
For sure.
Letting go of almost all of our staff.
Right.
Has been a lot. Over the course of 3 years, we went from, I guess, 2 or 3 of us up to at most 26, and now down to 4. And that has been really, really tough.
Yeah.
To bring on all these people excited about the growth of the company and the different opportunities that we're creating.
Yep.
And then just to see it all get whittled down to what it is. But at the same time, it's encouraging because we're not out, and we are trying to pivot still and determine, okay, what can we do now?
Yeah.
This is the new opportunity for us. This is a new obstacle. What can we change? So we've started adding grocery items to the stores, which has definitely helped us and helped the community. We've donated coffee to first responders and other frontline folks. So that's been a really big thing as well. People have bought coffee from us to donate, and that's good too. And so we're just doing our best to pivot and try to figure out what it is that we can do, taking a part of as many different programs as we can find and apply for. This is the new world of the pivot.
Yep. And I think it brings up a really important part of the pivot. Like sometimes a pivot is just a pivot. It doesn't make you feel any one way or another.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's really challenging, and you have to do things that that in the moment seem like completely counterintuitive. Letting go of 3/4 of our workforce, that was so hard because we worked hard to build a really solid team, and we spent a lot of time and effort investing into these folks, and we really like grew to know them well and worked well together, and then to have to let that many go. But I think when you kind of take all of the factors into account and balance the fact that The options are we do the hard thing and let all these people go and stay alive, so hopefully they have something to come back to.
Yeah.
Or we just try to be nice and keep everybody on, because that would be easier than making all of those phone calls. But at Sync the Company, in the long run, you haven't done anybody any favors.
Right.
And so I think that sometimes pivots can be really difficult things to swallow. And you have to keep the long-term vision in mind when you're making those pivots, because they're not always easy to handle.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, I think we have a lot more pivots in our future. Hopefully, some point, all of these stores will be allowed to reopen to full capacity.
Yeah.
Got fingers crossed.
Yeah.
This will all pass eventually. But it's looking like it's still a few months. And so...
Yeah, some places have started to open up.
Right.
Where we are here in Maryland, we're not quite open yet. So we've still got some stuff to get through. But when things open up again, it'll be a chance for a new pivot.
Right.
People have developed new habits and new buying patterns, and not to mention the fear that's going to happen because we are a public place.
Right.
And so you're going to encounter a lot of different people whenever you come here. So we're going to have to figure that one out.
Yeah.
And we've got some things that we're planning on. It's not like we're just waiting for that day to come, but there's still a lot of pivoting in our future just about this virus, not to mention all the other creative and fun programs that we were hoping to roll out this summer.
Yeah.
And now those have been kind of put on pause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the lesson of flexibility and being able to pivot has been critical for the growth of our company.
Yeah.
And the shrinking of our company in the short term over coronavirus, so that we can grow again. But I can't think of anything that has been more important in the life of our company so far than the willingness to pivot.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important lesson in any business that you start. It's not going to turn out how you imagine on day one.
Yeah.
It's just not. But I really like how we've talked through all of these stages, the ideation stage, the execution stage, and then the inevitable pivot stage.
Yeah.
And all three of those are so important.
So I am hoping that for anybody listening, that they feel encouraged that maybe they're not alone in having to make all these changes.
Yeah.
Because we've had to make many, many changes, some infuriating changes,
Right.
and some that are minor, but so annoying that we now have to make these little pivots. So I would hope that this is an encouragement, but also we want to be helpful to anybody who is in the midst of this, and maybe they're on the fence about, like, do I do this or do I do this? So if any of you watching or listening have a pivot that you've experienced, that you've learned a lot from, or a pivot that you're not sure what to do, we would love to know. We would love to see you drop it in the comments, or reach out to us. info@vagrantcoffee.com is the email you should use. We want to know. We want to hear what is going on. We want to be able to help if there's anything that we can do. So please feel free to shoot us that. We'll read through all the comments and all of the ideas, and maybe we'll even talk about it if it's something that we should bring up that could be a benefit to other people. We want to help in any way that we can. So we're going to put a pin in this pivot conversation for now. We'll keep you updated on everything that's going on in the future. But stay tuned next week for more interesting ideas about the other adventures that we've experienced on this journey. Because we're not done. We're not done. We're going to keep on hustling.
I don't remember how we're going to cut that. Yeah, that works, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. All right. Bye. Hey, everybody. It's Josh and Jared with the Vagrant Coffee HustleCast.
Tune in every Tuesday for new content at vagrantcoffee.com.
Please like, share, and subscribe.
Drink Vagrant Coffee
and keep hustling.